Honorable Deputy Speaker.
As we resume after tea, I recognize the member for Tobago West. You have your continuance of 21 minutes of your initial time.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to continue my presentation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to say before I continue, before the break, while I was speaking, there was much cross-talk and much comment, and I want to seek your protection from early, because I don't want to protect myself today, right? So I want to just put you on guard as it relates to that. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are here today to treat with this issue as it relates to a motion speaking to the need to diversify the economy and so on. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, this country has been in this place before. We could all recall the 1980s when there was an economic recession, and at that point in time, the NAR was in power. And there are members who now sit opposite, the members who now sit opposite that were part of that administration. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we ended up in the dollar was devalued in August of 1988. And in 1988, November, we were in the hands of the IMF. I was 6 years old at the time, but I'm sure there are people who are around who could recall what we would have experienced when we were in the hands of the IMF. There was reduction in wages and salaries. There was retrenchment. Unemployment went from 10% to 22%. The price of food went up extremely high because price controls were removed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And this government, at this point in time when we are facing low oil prices once again, we are trying to prevent this country from ending up in the hands of the IMF, especially coming after some of the hardest 5 years that this country has ever seen in our development, where monies had been wasted by government, squandered, given to friends, given to families, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We are now here to restore order to this country and bring back this place to a place of normalcy where we can feel comfortable and lift our heads as Trinbagonians again and feel proud, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we are here for that. So allow me to say that I am here for that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So the snide remarks and the comments and what they post about me on their Facebook pages, that's not my business. I here to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago from them. That's what I was created for. I here for that. So what they have to say about me in the remarks they're throwing at me and on their social media, I heard it because I was here standing. That's their business. That's not my business. I'm here to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago from them. And I'm not looking for likes. Likes and love is for your boyfriend and your husband and your mother and so, right? I'm here to serve. And it's a battalion of red people behind me. So let me place on the record, this is what I'm here for. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this government is serious about transforming this economy. This government is serious about diversifying the economy. And one of the ways we intend to do that is through the tourism sector. For the most part, our history shows, and our economic activity shows, that we have been dependent on oil and gas for quite some time. And we are now at a place where oil and gas prices are no longer favorable to us. In order to maintain the standard of living that we now enjoy and we have grown accustomed to, we have to diversify. We have to find other means and methods in order to bring in revenue. So we would have undergone a study to evaluate, to review the economic situation in Trinidad and Tobago, especially the tourism sector. We did our studies, we brought in our consultants, and we look at the numbers over the years. We have been experiencing declines in our tourism arrival numbers and spending and tourism spend for close to a decade, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So there are people who sit opposite who will try to make you think, since Shamfa Kajo became Minister of Tourism, nothing is happening in tourism. And I stopped to ask them, name, anybody come to me with that, I say name previous tourism ministers under their watch. And what did they do? Because there were at least 4 tourism ministers under their watch. At least 4 in a term of 5 years. There was Cadiz, there was Hadid, there was Sharma, there was Delmon Baker at one point in time, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And my question is, what was their contribution? And if you can't tell me what was their contribution, highlight some achievements of those 4 ministers under your watch. And you know what, too? The member for Kamuto Manzanilla served as a personal advisor to Minister Cadiz. And in 4 months, would have made at least 4 trips going out to solicit business for Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I want to know, what did you bring back? So since you done Shamfa Kajo Throat, what did you bring back? So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are here doing this work in order to transform the economy. And we have been, I was talking about the decrease. In 2010, the numbers went down by 62,000. 2011, a decrease of 22,000. In 2012, it went back up by 13,000. In 2013, arrivals declined by 10,000. 2014, declined by 22,000. 2015, up by 27,000. 2016 down by 31,000. 2017 down by 14,000. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have to employ strategies so that there is constant and consistent growth. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and the question coming from opposite is, have we done so? Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, so we have taken the initiative to have 2 separate entities, one for Trinidad, one for Tobago, and the country is well aware, because we are talking about 2 different sets of tourism products and services being offered. The Tobago House of Assembly, which is responsible for tourism development in Tobago, has established its company, and here in Trinidad, we are doing the same. So we're making the necessary move to place laser focus on a product, because it is difficult to get the necessary airlift to Trinidad and Tobago for tourism purposes, because we are so far south. The cost of airline tickets are usually more expensive. The cost of cruises to come to Trinidad and Tobago is usually more expensive because of how far south we are, and we have not been traditionally building the tourism sector. We have to ensure that our product is up to standard and up to quality. We also are working to provide the necessary assistance to stakeholders. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Government Loan Guarantee Program, where the government stands as guarantor for tourism stakeholders to ensure that there are no foreclosures. We could provide the necessary support so that they could face the bank to improve their businesses, to expand their business operations and so on. That is taking place, and we are subsidizing those loans to the tune of 5% of the interest rate. And each loan could stand guarantee of up to $10 million, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have had 19 success stories in the past under this program, and we have enlarged, expanded, and extended this program. And we are working with the banks to ensure that it is successful. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have identified an office for the government loan guarantee program through the TTBDL in Tobago. We have worked with CAS, and they have identified an office space. Because under the previous government, the TTBDL was kicked out of Tobago. And the person who was the Tobago officer was operating out of her home in Signal Hill. This government has identified an office space so that they could operate in Tobago, so that Tobago stakeholders could have access to those services. Mr. Deputy Speaker, allow me to move now to the room upgrade program, the tourism room upgrade program that was instituted in 2011 and never ever available to the stakeholders in Tobago. When you upgrade a room, you get 50% back if you have 6 rooms and above, and if you have under 6 rooms, you get a reimbursement of 40%. And the stakeholders in Tobago, who they care so much about and feel so sorry for, did not have the opportunity to improve their properties because they did not have access to this facility under their watch. Because they were back and forth with the Tobago House of Assembly about who has responsibility for tourism in Tobago. Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I took a note to the Cabinet in 2015, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and now that program is under the remit of the Tobago House of Assembly with the necessary funding to provide those services to the stakeholders in Tobago for the very first time. Mr. Deputy Speaker, a regulatory authority so that we can have basic standards in the tourism sector. We claim to be so caring about tourism. We want tourism to grow. And this country has never had mandatory standards for the sector. So anybody with a room downstairs, their mother house will say, yeah, I run in a guest house down there, without any kind of interruption. We are establishing basic and mandatory standards. The consultations are ongoing, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have had the assistance of both local and international stakeholders in order to bring this to life, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And for the first time in the history of this country, Trinidad and Tobago is working towards a regulatory authority to have basic standards. That has never happened. We are the only country in the region that claims to be serious about tourism development that don't have a standards authority or a basic standard scheme for tourism. So we want to talk about marketing, and we want to talk about all the other areas that are related to developing the tourism sector, but you don't want to talk standards? How could you stand up against a Barbados, a Bahamas, a Jamaica? And that has never happened before in the history of this country, and it is now happening for the first time, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And alongside these developments, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are working in Tobago and in Trinidad to develop the infrastructure to make a proper business, a favorable business environment for stakeholders and for investors from outside to come. So we talk about the desalination plant in Tobago. We talk about the new wells to bring us up to 9 million gallons of water per day, more water per day, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We talk about the Cove plant and the improvement in electrical facilities to Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We talk about the street lighting process that is program that is taking place from east to west. The southwest, where most of Tobago's tourism activity happens. The southwest wastewater treatment, that is happening in Tobago now under this government, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and that did not happen before. So when you hear those opposites talk about what are you doing for tourism, we have to ask them, well, what did you do for tourism, especially in Tobago? And Pooch East would have said, he's taking a ride and he's pointing out developments in Tobago. You could not have done that under their watch. All the development taking place in Tobago would have taken place in Tobago under the last decade is under the People's National Movement in Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And you know, I could remember the Chief Secretary writing the then leader of the House, the Prime Minister at that time, Mrs. Kamala Prasad, no member for Siparia, writing over and over for assistance to provide relief to the people of Tobago. And they were laughing on their political platform saying he's going to write until his ink done. I remember that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I remember having URP in Tobago and no allocations made for URP projects. I remember no allocations made for CPEP project, and you claim to be concerned about the people of Tobago. Today, I'm pleased, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to see the new Chief Secretary in Tobago, Mr. Kelvin Charles, revamping the CPEP project. Having the people, everybody who's enrolled in CPEP now have to take an evening class to develop their skills. And it is about improving productivity in Tobago, because to enter this new chapter of development as it relates to tourism, people have to change their culture, change our attitude. Tobagonians have to become more productive, and the new Tobago House of Assembly is working with Tobagonians to ensure that that happens. And even as we look to welcome in Sandals and other new developments in Tobago, you have the Tobago House of Assembly Division of Tourism working with the Tobago Hospitality Institute to provide classes and courses to Tobagonians, preparing us for when Sandals come. And not just when Sandals come, but preparing us to be better service providers in Tobago, because oftentimes people complain about customer service and Tobagonians are not ready to seize the moment when we are developing Tobagonians in a developing Tobago. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are not where we need to be, but the work is taking place, and Rome was not built in a day. And yes, there were days when Tobago saw figures of 80-something thousand visitors. And now, and those were the days when we were better able to collect information, record information, because we could have picked up people coming into Trinidad and coming into Tobago in 2008. That process was changed. And we are only now picking up numbers of people flying directly in Tobago. And we are now working with CSO and Ministry of Planning to have a better system where we can capture those who would have landed in Tobago, in Trinidad, and going on to Tobago. And that would help us to figure out what is really taking place as it relates to our figures. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, work is happening. I'm pleased to see the Tobago House of Assembly working with agricultural groups to bring agricultural projects and programs in sync with tourism. So now there are tours on Cocoa Estate. You have Tobago agro-processors doing work and working alongside tourism stakeholders in Tobago. Yes, airlift has been a problem. We are happy to welcome Condor, happy to welcome Thomas Cook, and Tobago House of Assembly alongside the Ministry of Tourism and Airport Authority went out to Ecuador a couple of weeks ago, Carnival Week, to the Roots Conference to speak to airline service providers to bring direct flights to Trinidad and to Tobago also. So the work is ongoing. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we talk about Grange Police Station, Crum Point Police Station, Chauvin Police Station, Mr. Deputy Speaker, making Tobago more attractive for investment, and I like to say a good place to live is a good place to spend your vacation. The Ministry of Finance is in talks with the Tobago House of Assembly about the marina for Tobago. And under this government, I remember sitting opposite Mr. Deputy Speaker and bringing complaints from the Maximen in Tobago and the tourism operators in Tobago because there was a quota on the number of, a limit on the number of buses that could have been that could have served Tobago at the time. I think it was 25 at the time, asking that that limit be raised so that when cruise ships come in, we have enough buses to transport both the school children and to transport the visitors. And we did not get that help from that government. It is under this government in that 2017-2018 budget that would have lifted the limit so that Tobagonians could now invest in that kind of business and provide better services. And you want to sit there and ask what's happening with tourism in Tobago. Yes, it's going to take some time to get there, but we are now doing what you did not do. That's right. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to speak also about the wedding fraternity in Tobago, because you know the bulk of we are moving towards improving our capacity to do weddings in Tobago. We are better attraction to do weddings than Trinidad, destination to do weddings than Trinidad. We do destination weddings for tourists. And it is this government that would have extended the time so you could have early morning weddings, late evening weddings. We would have also reduced the residency time so that foreigners who come into Tobago to get married don't have to wait 3 days anymore. They can now do so within 1 day. And it is this People's National Movement government that listened to the people of Tobago and had that done. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, allow me to turn my attention now to some of what the Ministry of Tourism have been doing. It is this Minister of Tourism and this PNM government that would have introduced to Trinidad and Tobago the first mobile app for tourism. Mr. Member of Parliament for Caroni Central would have talked about, if we are talking about diversification, we have to talk about digital technology and so on. It is this government, this Ministry of Tourism that introduced for the first time the Go Trinbago app. We have now access over 19 countries and have over 90,000 downloads of the Go Trinbago app at the touch of a button from your smartphone, from your iPad. You can see what there is to offer in Tobago and in Trinidad, and that is run alongside our Lime 365 campaign. Let's talk about Stay to Get Away, because we have to change the culture and improve people's knowledge and understanding and appreciation for tourism. So we launched the Stay to Get Away campaign so that locals would be encouraged to go from village to village, seeing different sites and attraction, experience Trinidad and Tobago for themselves, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry of Tourism hosted, I think the program would have ended around 3 o'clock, a symposium called Digitalization of the Tourism Sector. And we are looking at how technology has impacted the tourism sector, because here in Trinidad and Tobago, at least 40% of our stakeholders do not have an online presence. And in order to make it today in business, you have to have access to your customers far and wide through online presence, using the internet, using social media, Instagram, Facebook, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and that had not happened before. Prior to that, we would have solely depended on spending monies to go out there to different trade shows and so on, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Millions and millions and millions, even billions of dollars to do so, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But now we can access a wider range of customers and potential travelers to Trinidad and Tobago by the use of technology. So we brought over 300 stakeholders to the Hyatt today. And we partnered with Massey, we partnered with stakeholders, we partnered with the private sector in order to teach our stakeholders, to properly equip them so they can better stand, be on a stronger footing as we look to expand our business and improve our attractiveness and competitiveness here in Trinidad and Tobago. And that has not happened before. Further, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a part of our PSIP project, we have a digital technology program where we are going to help our stakeholders to establish social media and internet presence, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And that is the kind of work that is taking place. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are reviewing the national tourism policy, which is now 9 years old, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We are also reviewing the master plan, the tourism master plan, which was developed in 1995 when I was informed, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Member for Tobago West, your initial 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15. You care to avail yourself?
Yes, thank you.
Kindly proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was in second form when ribbons at Scarborough Secondary School when the master plan was developed, and governments came and left after that. And we are still here working with a master plan that was developed in 1995. The UNC came and left twice and did nothing with it. And it is this government, this administration, that is working to improve the master plan so that we can all be on one page. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I said, in order to have the necessary improvement to move to where we want to go, we have to bring our young people on board. So we are engaging in school caravans. We have gone out to different schools, educating the young people about tourism, helping them to develop an attitude and appreciation for service, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We're doing social media campaigns to encourage young people to take pictures, to develop their skills in short video production and in writing short stories about Trinidad and Tobago. And that is the work taking place under the Ministry of Tourism. I want to talk a little bit, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about the Junior Minister of Tourism initiative that we are working with Caribbean Tourism Organization. For the first time in the history of this nation, we entered, Trinidad and Tobago, through the Ministry of Tourism, entered the Junior Minister of Tourism Conference and Caucus. That initiative had been around with CTO since the year 2000. Ministers and governments came and left. And that did not happen. We didn't participate. We participated for the first time year before last year, and all participants who came from Manzanilla Secondary was placed second place in the competition. And our participant for last year, Ms. Tellisford from Naparima Girls High, placed third, and she's our Junior Minister of Tourism for today, encouraging young people, making that paradigm shift, bringing everybody on board. And you did not participate during your time. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to move now to our physical projects. We are improving. We are doing improvement works at the stands. Of course, well, let me talk about Maracas first. Many have come and gone and talked about developing Maracas and the Maracas project, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Package 1 has been completed, and we have moved from 140 parking spaces to 360 parking spaces of international standard. As the member for Uruput said, this is not just a car park. This is an entertainment facility. Yeah? It's a place for economic activity. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to thank NIPDEC for coming on board, for helping us to run that car park. We have the retention pond already built, so that flooding of the area should be a thing of the past, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have the new booths being built that had not been rebuilt since the 1960s, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And that is happening under this government. That is some of the nothing happening in the Ministry of Tourism. Mr. Deputy Speaker, allow me to speak a little bit about our trip to World Travel Market done last year, November. And we were able to attract Der Touristik, a German company, which is the largest German travel agent company. And they are going to be coming to Trinidad for the first time to do a mega farm trip in November of this year. And that has never happened before, where Trinidad has been able to attract the Scandinavian market. We have 140 travel agents coming to participate in a mega farm trip. We are now participating in negotiations with them, and we look forward to bringing this thing to life. We go to ITB in a couple of weeks in order to further our discussions with them. I hope, Mr. Deputy Speaker, some mischievous person don't go sending bad notes to them, because that has happened before. Whenever this side sets out to do something good for this country, there is always somebody mischievous, opposite or otherwise, trying to do something negative in order to negate our actions, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But as I said, we are here for the development of the people of Tobago. We are here for the development of this country. And I mark with interest member for Cuba South. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was looking at the news a couple days, probably last week, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and there was Cuba South saying, responding to one vagrant. I think it's one vagrant who stole a tin of something from a grocery. I think it's tuna and something. And the members got on TV, they're thieving in Tobago, things so bad, the boat didn't come, they didn't have no food. When you have people, Mr. Deputy Speaker, especially in high office, going out there trying to ill-speak the destination, how do you expect people to want to come, Mr. Deputy Speaker? That is not the reality of the situation,
Silence.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Where in
Silence.
Tobago you live?
You're so unpatriotic.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to ask some of these people, where in Tobago do they live? I live in Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I travel back and forth at least 3-4 times a week to serve. I live there. Where in Tobago you live?
Members, again, individuals, members would have their time. Individuals and members would have their time in order to enter the debate on the particular motion. All right, we have been going fine. Please minimize on the number of outbursts and the loudness of the outbursts, please. Proceed, member for Tobago West.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, as somebody who was born and grew up in Tobago, who lived there, who served the people there, who travel back and forth and well aware of what's taking place in Tobago, I would say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this inter-island transportation has been challenging for us, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But you see the horror stories that members opposite and their supporters and friends are trying to have out there in the public domain. It is not true, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And it is killing the destination, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I go to the grocery in Tobago from eggs, cheese, almond milk, yogurt, you name it, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So to try to give people an impression that nothing is happening there and there's no food in the grocery and so on, it is totally untrue. And anybody who cares about Trinidad and Tobago, anybody who cares about Tobago in any kind of way would not encourage that kind of talk. And I want to speak to the Tobagonian through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Because there are people who claim to be concerned about the Tobagonian going out there and ill-speaking the destination. Tourism is our business. There are people who claim to care about Tobago who are saying the boat ain't coming, so we can't bring kiss bread from Tobago, from Trinidad. We can't bring kiss bread from Trinidad to Tobago. Anybody, I want to speak to the Tobagonian through you. The Chamber of Commerce in Tobago and all their friends are supposed to be encouraging private sector development and commerce in Tobago. Supposed to be encouraging the Tobagonian to plant, to manufacture, to bake bread, to sell to Tobagonians, not to bring kiss bread from Trinidad. So these fake businessmen who are really distributors, bringing goods from Trinidad and killing the entrepreneurial spirit in Tobago, those people don't care about Tobago. And I want to talk to the Tobagonian through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because I would not be distracted by Cuba North or South. I'm here to talk to my people, the people that I represent, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So anybody who speaks to the Tobagonian to tell them depend on a boat to bring food for them, that's not your friend. We need to get back to planting, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have to get back to developing our own products, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to sell to our own people and get to the point of exporting those products, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm not saying it's perfect. We have much work to do, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And that is what the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government is working to help Tobagonians to become developing or even better Tobagonians in Tobago for Tobago. Don't let nobody from outside, Tobagonian by boat, come to tell you, oh, things bad in Tobago because we didn't get to bring our goods from Trinidad. That's not the spirit of the Tobagonian. That is not who we are as a people. And last year we had double digit in crime. Crime is a problem throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And we got hit hard last year because I'm not accustomed to seeing double figures. We got to about 10 or about 12 murders, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And there were members opposite screaming, murders in Tobago gone up by 700%, trying to scare away people from coming to Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Crime is a problem everywhere in Trinidad and Tobago. And I heard the member from Orapooch East speak about how bad gang violence is and so on. If you care about Trinidad and Tobago and love Trinidad and Tobago, wouldn't you support the Anti-Gang Act and any work that the government is doing in order to alleviate these problems and to resolve these problems? So it's all well and good for you to come here and scream things bad, but you're not helping to resolve it. And you patriotic and you want to lead somebody, you won't be leading Tobago. You won't be leading Tobago for sure. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to speak to Tobagonians through you. Beware. Beware, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I want to tell Tobagonians, beware. Mind your business. And let's get back to work and get Tobago to where it needs to be. This government is serious about diversifying the economy. We've seen the work that's taking place in Tobago. We look forward to the expanded Crown Point Airport. We look forward to the electrical program being completed at Cove. We look forward to the wastewater treatment program being completed. We look forward to all this government is giving to Tobago. We thank God and thank the people of Tobago and Trinidad who voted the People's National Movement, because if we were still in their hands, Mr. Deputy Speaker, God alone knows. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak.
False prophets. Avoid false prophets.
I recognize the member for Couva North.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this motion here this evening. And unlike my colleague and member for Tobago West, I will try to make my contribution in a dignified manner, very much fitted to this August House. Mr. Deputy Speaker, oh, and she has left, so better yet. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me just make reference to, first and foremost, the member for Tobago West in her diatribe, very emotional diatribe here this evening. And I must say that she stood for 45 minutes, the member stood for 45 minutes, and really did not say anything of substance. Anything that would instill hope in the people of Trinidad and Tobago, especially Tobagonians here this evening, to allow for them to believe that a brighter day is coming for them. Mr. Deputy Speaker, she made a number of statements, made a number of statements about Tobago tourism. And I just want to remind her, and this is not me speaking, because if it is that the member is accusing us on this side for peddling fake news and bad news and being unpatriotic, I just want to identify for record purposes that in The Guardian of 10th May 2017, shops running out of stocks, that was the title of the article, shops running out of stocks in Tobago. And it was, of course, a testimonial from someone from a supermarket called Jesus Christ, the Jesus Christ supermarket in Tobago. And then in May 11, 2017, Bill Brown, one of the bigger or the biggest supermarket in Tobago, spoke also to the Express newspaper, an article talking about empty shelves in Tobago. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is not us here or the member for Couva North or the member for Couva South peddling fake news. It is the media that has been reporting accurate news to the population. We have not created this type of news. No one would want to create news like that coming out of Tobago, but it is the media reporting. And if we don't have any sort of faith and trust in our media, the third estate of this country, the fourth estate, sorry, of this country, then I don't know what to say about the other side. And you know, the member for San Fernando East is laughing loudly with my reference to media, but everybody knows that he loves the media more than anyone else. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me also state that the member for Tobago West, Mr. Deputy Speaker, made reference about when we got into power in 2010, cutting 10,000 jobs in Tobago. But I want to remind her that during our tenure, unlike their government, what they are doing now, which is, of course, firing people left, right, and center, we created 58,000 jobs in our 5-year tenure. 58,000 jobs, sustainable jobs, call it what you want. 58,000 jobs. We never had that high rate of unemployment that we now experience here in Trinidad and Tobago. Levels of investment were high. Foreign direct investment was high. And yes, the economy was much better back then. But at the end of the day, you have to wonder that in times of challenges, you really would want to see your government step up to the plate to encourage and to work harder and to encourage foreign direct investment in our country. And this is what they have failed to do. They have failed in 2.5 years to encourage any sort or to implement any sort of revenue-generating project for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why they have no choice but to implement the harsh measures that at the end of the day affects the mass of the people the most. Harsh measures. What am I talking about, Mr. Deputy Speaker? I am talking about since Budget 2015, there's been harsh measures in terms of introducing and implementing and creating new taxes. New taxes, extension and increases in existing taxes. Why is that such a necessary tool for this government to generate revenue at this point in time, especially when the economy is going through such hardships? Especially when you have that poverty class that is growing daily and that therefore there is no hope around really for the people of this country to rely on getting any jobs. And now we have these new slew of taxes that keep coming at us at every budget that this government implements. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member spoke about the Sandals project and about how they are so very happy to have been speaking with Sandals since before their incarnation as this government and previous governments. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, 2.5 years later into their tenure, they're still talking. I remember right here in this house, the Minister of Finance came in 2015 and spoke about the construction of the Sandals Hotel, the creation of 500 jobs and $500 million in revenue that would come out of the construction of the Sandals Hotel. And up to this day, the Tobago people are still waiting for that project. And you can't tell me 2.5 years after you're still negotiating. Why? Why are you still negotiating? Is it that Sandals is driving a hard bargain and our Honorable Prime Minister and other ministers across on the other side are trying to do what is best for the people? Is it just that? Is it just as simple as that? Or is it that somebody's trying to broker deals? They talk about our side brokering deals with contractors when we were in government and all of that. What is really going on the other side? The excuses, nobody sees it anymore. Nobody's believing their excuses anymore. Last night I would have had the unfortunate experience of listening to the Prime Minister, hearing him in his, again, diatribe about in his diatribe, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Silence.
He is my Prime Minister, and I would like to hear him. As much as I am disappointed in him. Exactly, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Again, member. Amidst everything, address the chair.
Sure, thank you. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I was saying, I listened in into what he has to say. He's the Prime Minister for all. He likes to claim that. And therefore, I was looking out for some hope for our country because, as you know, we are at our lowest at this point in time. And what is happening here is that he's talking about and trying to justify the projects under the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure with respect to the Komoto-Manzilina Highway, trying to justify it. And I sat there and I listened, and I said to myself, oh, my God, really? The population has gone past beyond the excuses of the Prime Minister and the justification of the Prime Minister. People are seeing right through their facade, and they are continuing to try, or in their attempt to try to fool the people of Trinidad and Tobago, they are thinking that we are still uneducated. What is more unpatriotic than that? Taking us for fools in this country, leading us down a path that would want us to believe that they are working in our best interest when we know that it is quite the other way around. Crime, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the #1 issue, the burning issue at the forefront of our country at this point in time. High crime all across Trinidad and Tobago. We talk about wanting to diversify the economy and to encourage tourism, but all of the best laid plans that the Minister of Tourism spoke about and not yet implemented, all of those best laid plans would be for naught if people don't feel safe and secure coming to your country. If it is that I know as a tourist that if I want to go to a particular country to have a vacation for a week or 2 weeks, and I read on a travel advisory from one of the international embassies, UK, US, whatever it is, that it is not safe to come to Trinidad and Tobago, would I not take heed of that? So how can we attempt to diversify the economy, talking about tourism, which is, of course, 100% reliant on the number of visitors that come to your country, and you have a very unsecure environment? So it's all for naught. And at this point in time, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, again, continue to blame the opposition for its failures. You cannot control crime. You cannot deal with crime, and you are using the petty excuse of a piece of legislation that we are about to debate in Parliament as the reason why the crime rate is out of control. It can't be that cut and dried at all. And I was reading in one of the newspapers this morning about intelligence and help that they as a government and we as a country are receiving from other countries. That is all well and good, but the same way that you are able to gather intelligence and act on it, it is the same way you can do so domestically within our own country, working with the TTPS, working with the Defense Force, working with the SIA, because they boasted a lot last night about their security apparatus, working with all of these agencies to gather intelligence and to act on these criminals. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the population, again, as I said, they are not fooled anymore. And they will not digest and they would not accept the fact that this government has done nothing to alleviate the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago and continue to blame the opposition for it. They will not accept it, and they have not been accepting it for a while. And I think that the government is very disillusioned when it comes to their strategy and how they work on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They think that they're doing something good. But when you go out there in the streets and you speak to the individual and you speak to the normal man, Tobago West, the member for Tobago West made reference to getting Tobago back to normalcy. What does that mean? This government, this PNM-led government, has sat over the bloodiest month in the history of our country, that of January 2018, the highest number of murders ever. Ever. Check it. And they are coming to tell us, and they are telling the population that they are coming and they are blaming the opposition for not working with them to stem the crime situation. No, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We will not accept it, and the population does not accept it. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, and I want to make reference to, again, Tobago West and what the member said earlier, I realize that she's waging a war against her own people also by insulting the Tobago Chamber of Business here this afternoon, telling the businessmen of Tobago...
Mr. Deputy Speaker, 48-6.
Making an interpretation. Making what?
You should know better. You should know better. What?
Members? Member, could you just rephrase, use a better term?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I said, and I will rephrase, let me just refer to the member for Tobago West when she made the comment that Tobago businessmen, alluding to them being not 100% for their country by having to bring in goods and services from Trinidad and talking about Kiss Bakery and bringing bread from Trinidad to Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is wrong for that? For many years before any of us here entered this parliament, that has been the business operations between Trinidad and Tobago. How can you stand there and insult the Tobago businessmen and the business sector of Tobago for wanting to import goods and services to Tobago and having a failed air and sea bridge? Having a failed air and sea bridge. Tobago is not 100% self-sufficient. We would love Tobago to be 100% self-sufficient, but they are not. They rely heavily on Trinidad goods and services, and nothing is wrong with that. That has been an arrangement since our days of independence and since becoming an independent country. So at the end of the day, whilst Tobago tried to struggle with its challenges, you have the Member of Parliament for Tobago West waging war on her own people. That's what it is.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, standing order 48-6, waging war on her own people.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we have to be realistic about situations in Trinidad and Tobago. We can no longer sit and say, you know, this is not happening and that is not happening. We would have seen the UK diplomat last yesterday, Frontline News, saying that we need to be realistic about terror threats in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is what we need. We need to wake up and smell the coffee. Under this government, everything has gotten worse. It really is a bad situation when you look at the crime situation, when you look at the education sector. A number of schools, as members of parliament on both sides, we are experiencing a number of schools being shut down, non-functioning, problems arising every Monday morning. No management system is in place under the Ministry of Education to effectively deal with situations like these. And I would make reference to the Carpichaima East Secondary in my constituency, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for a month.
I rise in 48-1.
Overruled.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And you know, in our attempt to diversify the economy, we need to be good managers and CEOs. We need to really have that part of training developed. And within our state agencies, and as members of parliament who manage constituencies, manage these schools sometimes in terms of assisting principals and staff and all of that with efficiently running schools, it is really a shame that in this day and age, we still have to be running and calling and writing letters to the Ministry of Education to come and deal with these little fires that pop up here and there and everywhere. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is just a sideline, but I want to go back to Tobago. The Member of Parliament for Tobago West spoke about these activities that they were trying to improve in terms of revenue generation, and she spoke about an app, the member spoke about an app that was introduced to showcase the tourism aspect of Trinidad and Tobago. That is all well and good, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because we need to measure the impact and the result of those projects and programs that are being implemented. And we won't know how effective it is until it has been true and tried. So we wait to see how impactful these programs and these apps and all of that she spoke about, the member spoke about, as it is implemented. But I want to refer, and I always stand here and I speak about it, I want to refer to a number of tourism-oriented festivals that the Tobago House of Assembly always have on an annual basis. And I make reference to the Tobago Jazz Festival, the Tobago Heritage Festival, the Blue Food Festival. These festivals that have been ongoing on an annual basis for the past 12 years or so have been proven to be a loss for Tobago in terms of revenue generation. And we would have had a JSC on it. We would have had recommendations coming out of that JSC, a report laid in Parliament that is open for the public to access, stating that these festivals need to be properly managed and that these festivals need to be generating revenues. Otherwise, the government of the day, central government, needs to stop funding it. In years gone before, we would have seen every year central government, of course, expending millions of dollars on these festivals with no sort of return coming back to the THA. Just recently, the member for Tobago West spoke about 2 additional airlines flying to Tobago. But what about the $10 million that went missing? Have we heard anything about that? That $10 million that went missing? Has there been an update on that investigation? Has anyone been held for that? Exactly, and those monies, I understand, were supposed to be going to pay for one of the airlines that fly into Tobago. So we need to know. So you can't come here, hypocritical, self-righteous, and be talking about what you're doing and what you're not doing and what we did and keep blaming us, and you have all of these things taking place under your watch, and there is no clarification to the public or anyone about it. So I would like to ask the question, whoever maybe have a couple minutes after me, to please let us know where the $10 million gone. Who, anybody's been held? The investigative, the police, any member of parliament is willing to step up and say something about this? Because people need to know. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, in the media prior to Carnival and even during, we would have seen media reports coming from various sectors within the tourism community. We had the Tobago Hoteliers Association speaking about the lowest ever with respect to visitors to Tobago. And again, that is because of the failed air and sea bridge that this government continue to neglect time and time again. Like last night I heard the Minister of Works speaking about, hold on Tobago, hold on, it's coming. A solution is coming. After 2.5 years, it didn't reach yet. When is going to come? In 2020? And this is what we are speaking about. Things are not being done in a timely manner to alleviate the simple challenges that the people of Tobago and Trinidad face. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was making reference to media reports from different sectors within the tourism economy saying that it has been the lowest number of arrivals. The hotels are empty. We need to do more with respect to our marketing strategies. And all of these little things, recommendations are being given. Whilst criticisms are being given, recommendations are also being given. And I need to understand why it is that it is so hard for this government to implement some of these simple recommendations that are being made by the said people who are working and trying to exist within that sector. That is what I'm trying hard to understand. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as the Minister of Tourism would like to allude and again blame us here on this side for Tobago's declining tourism sector, for Tobago crime. We are responsible for that. Everything going wrong in Trinidad and Tobago, the opposition and the UNC is to blame for that. Member for Tabaquite. The population not going to believe that or swallow that. So time to get a new rhetoric. Time to get a new strategy. Yeah. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, the member for Tobago West made reference to WASA and TNTEC and the basic amenities of water and electricity and all these projects that are so-called now happening in Tobago. And I want to refute that 100% to let the member know that these projects were ongoing even before our time in 2010. And when we came into power, we never cut funding for these projects. The Cove project under the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission. That Cove project started before our tenure and it continued under our tenure. And therefore, to say that we are responsible for not doing anything in Tobago, we did a lot of work in Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We were responsible under former Minister of Tourism, Minister Stephen Cadiz, for the reopening and the refurbishment of the Magdalena Hotel. That Magdalena Hotel, I can't say the exact cost at this point in time, but that happened our tenure, and now it is being marketed by the THA and by the Ministry of Tourism as a destination point and vacation hotel for persons coming into Tobago. So you can't stand there and say we did nothing for Tobago. That is totally untrue. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to also move on a little bit to talk about diversification with respect to agriculture. And in the past couple of days, we would have seen a heated debate going on with respect to the conversion of agricultural lands to housing with respect to the St. Augustine nurseries, lands of the St. Augustine nurseries. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I personally, and I think all of my colleagues here will agree with me, that housing should not be placed on viable agricultural lands. Should not be placed. And whilst they will counteract and said, well, you know, when you all were in government, you all bulldoze a whole set of farmlands and whatever it is. Housing did not go up there. Yes, it did not.
Silence.
So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we believe that these, and it is the most fertile lands, it's grade 1 agricultural lands around the St. Augustine nurseries. And today I made contact with the president of the Agricultural Society, Ms. Dano Suku, and I was asking her about the citrus greening that our Prime Minister spoke about last night. Our Prime Minister spoke about that the citrus greening disease started at the St. Augustine nurseries. He was totally wrong. He has been misinformed again. I don't know who is informing our Prime Minister, but he has been sorely misinformed. The citrus greening disease came into this country or started 15 years ago, according to the president of the Agricultural Society, by farmers. It has existed there. It didn't start there. It existed throughout the country 15 years ago. So for the Prime Minister to say and to justify that those trees need to be cut down and the agricultural land need to be put for housing because the citrus greening started there, that is totally untrue, according to the president of the Agricultural Society. There's no evidence to show that the citrus greening disease started there. So it is a means to justify an end, which is voter padding in the constituency for St. Joseph. This is what is happening. And whether you want to say it's wrong or it's right, the member for St. Joseph...
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Standing Order 48-4.
You don't know what the meaning of that is?
Sorry, 48-6.
Member, again, we would, accordingly, we would.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will reword by saying that they want to put housing on viable agricultural lands to increase the number of votes to benefit their party for the 2020 general election. That is my rewording, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Standing Order 48-6 to win more votes. That is an improper motive. It is not true. Don't forget we won it fair and square in 2015.
Again, members, members, you have asked me to rule on a standing order. Member for Couva South, again.
North.
Couva North, in terms of you need to clear it up, and you need to reword and ensure that we don't have no conflict in terms of the information.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they are constructing or they want to attempt to construct houses on fertile grade 1 agricultural soil and lands, hoping that those new houses and persons that they populate them with will vote for the PNM.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, 48-4, 48-6, and also 48-1.
Member for Couva North.
Yes,
right?
sir.
This is the third time, right? So I don't want to read this stage in order to ensure that you have to retract your statement, but I want you to reword it and ensure for the answer that it's properly in place, please. And at this time, it's now 6:01. Right? In terms of the motion, we're supposed to end at 6. But in terms of agreement, with regards to Standing Order 126, agreement between the Leader of Government, Leader of the House, and also the Chief Whip, where you will finish your initial 30 minutes at 6:04. Right? So therefore, again, based on the Standing Order, make your correction, and then you'll have until 6:04 to conclude your initial 30 minutes.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me just say that the intention to construct houses on these viable agricultural lands says something quite differently to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and they would hope that this sort of initiative, housing initiative, would benefit them.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I crave your indulgence. 48-1. 48-6. I must insist at this point in time, those remarks be retracted and taken off of the record.
Member, at this time, being the fourth occasion, I'll ask you to retract, move on to a different point.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I retract. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will move on because I have 2 minutes. Yes, I have 2 more minutes left, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we're speaking about agriculture, we're talking about diversifying the economy, and our Prime Minister last night alluded to him having a farmer's badge and being a farmer and all of that. He also made reference to the issue with the buffalo in our country and the import of the buffalo that were brought down with diseases. So he claimed, and yes, brucellosis, and therefore breeding, it hinders breeding and multiplication of the species here, and therefore he's saying that they need to be put down. But the livestock specialists in the country are asking, so what replaces the buffalo? So if you kill them off, what are we going to bring in, or how are we going to bring them in? What are we going to replace them with? Because it is a disease that is quite easily, spread amongst this, the buffalo. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the farmers of this country and the livestock farmers today are asking for evidence to show that this disease is having a negative impact on the population of buffalo and hindering the breeding of such. So again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would allude to our Prime Minister being sorely misinformed by whoever is advising him on farming. And at this point in time, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to conclude because of time. Pause.
I now call on the Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to Friday, the 2nd of March at 1:30 p.m., when we will start debate on a bill entitled an act to amend the Valuation of Land Act, Chapter 58.03, and a bill entitled an act to amend the Property Tax Act, Chapter 76.04. And we ask that they both be taken together as one package.
Members? Honorable members, there is one matter that qualifies to be raised on the motion before the adjournment of the House. I will now call on the member for Tabakit.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, last week in the Parliament, I also raised a matter on the adjournment. And I hope this week the government will be more attentive to the plight of the persons on behalf of whom I'm going to raise this matter, rather than attempt to ridicule the contribution that I was making last week. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the motion before the House is the failure of the Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries to bring into production the use of the Brothers Road packing house located in my constituency, the constituency of Tabakit. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this motion is very timely in that we are discussing also this afternoon diversification. And one of the things about diversification is that you have to have certain kind of infrastructure. And I think that a strategically thinking or some strategic thinking on the part of the Minister of Agriculture could result in using this particular packing facility together with the natural resources that are available in the area by way of vegetables and fruits and what have you, to create a platform for diversification and employment opportunities on a more sustainable basis than exists in that particular area at this point in time. A little bit of history about this packing house. It was built under the tenure of the People's Partnership. Mr. Devant Maharaj was then the Minister of Food Production. And it was opened in 2015. I know the Minister is going to argue that all the equipment and so on was not there, but part of the whole process of getting it going would have been equipping it in such a way that the facility would have been made useful. Because everything about the government member for Port Spain, North St. Anne's is an excuse. And you know, one of the things that as a government you've got to really begin to defeat in terms of your psyche is the excuse management practices that you have. You'll soon come to realize that excuse management can only take you so far. That what matters at the end is your ability to deliver in terms of what people want. The site chosen for this particular packing house was an abandoned sawmill that belonged to Tantique Limited. And you know what is very interesting? Even if you say, okay, look, you know, this packing facility, I don't want to use it. Some good thinking, Mr. Minister of Agriculture, would suggest to you that in light of the fact that you have now stopped the export of teak, which is a good thing in my view, but you have done nothing since you stopped the export of teak to take those very teak fields surrounding that area and to bring the technology to the particular dozens of furniture manufacturers in that particular region and give them the capacity to begin to build for export furniture in the same way that millions of dollars of foreign exchange are now being used by Unicommer to bring beds that are just packed up, made into pieces, packed up, or furniture from Malaysia, from Brazil, from Mexico, and from China. When you could be doing that with teak and other hardwood that is available in that particular area or that can be sourced also from Guyana. So the possibilities for that packing house in terms of diversification and in terms of moving that area into greater economic activity is there sitting on your lap, but you have done nothing with it. So the building, you may argue, was not outfitted for use. I am saying that you don't only look at what it was built for, you could have looked at other areas in terms of transforming economic activity. So literally, the building is now in a state of abandonment. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, This packing house was a major project that involved many farmers in the area. And it was not just a project that came about willy-nilly. It started with a major consultation with the Tabaquite Vegetable Farmers Association, which is one of the most active group of farmers, not only in the Tabaquite area, but in Trinidad. And the project was one which could have been of great use and benefit to the farmers also of surrounding areas. Now, the Tabaquite Vegetable Farmers Association consists of approximately 100 farmers. And other farmers' associations in the area, Mr. Minister will be aware, are like Brickfield, Brothers Road, San Pedro, Lightbourne, Tortuga. And they were also included in this project because of the location of the packing house. It would have been able to service, therefore, a wide geographic area. NAMDEVCO, which is a statutory board under the Ministry of Agriculture, was also heavily involved in this project. So it was not just a fanciful idea of the People's Partnership Government. It was a project that was done in consultation with the stakeholders and a project aimed at bringing benefit to the stakeholding community. And the main purpose of the packing house was not just to package and process produce for sale in local and export markets, but more importantly, or significantly, to be used also as a storage facility for farmers, especially when there was a glut in production. Or if you had overproduction, they could have stored there. Because right now, what is happening is that when there's an overproduction, prices fall or people just dump. And one of the things, Mr. Minister, I have always argued, and I still truly believe in my heart, is that there's no shortage of green vegetables in this country. I don't think that we should be importing green vegetables. Incidentally, I'm going to bring to you next week. I intend to bring it today. I just forgot it because I didn't have the permission of the speakers yet to display it. But cabbage, plastic cabbage that is being sold in the market. Plastic cabbage being sold in the market. I have it in my office. Plastic cabbage. Someone bought it and brought it to my office. And you would believe it's the real thing. Plastic cabbage. So this matter of plastic cabbage and plastic rice and so on is a real issue in the country, Mr. Minister, that needs to be investigated. I'll bring it to you and you'll see it. So farmers could then get a reasonable price, a stable price over time for their produce when there's a surplus, and even the consumers would benefit from the fixed price when there's a shortage during heavy rains or floods. And do you know what? Farmers had agreed to pay a rent based on what they store at the facility. So this was not something that the farmers were looking for a free ride. The farmers had agreed that they will pay the cost of storing their produce. That is a low employment area. Low employment means heavy unemployment in that area. And people need employment. And unless you develop industries in rural areas, you're not going to resuscitate rural economies. One of the mistakes we are making in this country is that we are continuing to concentrate on the urban and town areas, and we are forgetting that there's a whole rural community to be developed. And this is why everything is becoming centralized and crowded and so on, and we are forgetting about developing the small towns. We have to change our philosophy and change the approach to develop the small towns so that they too can become sustainable, larger towns, and people can find employment there, and there can be growth and expansion. And if you do that...
you have 2 minutes.
Yes. You may very well find that people will make a greater contribution to the economy as a whole. Now, the farmers were also interested in having a market day where people could visit and purchase items at wholesale and retail prices, like you're doing in Chaguanas. And these farmers, therefore, had great vision, great vision. And the packing house was part of the implementation or making real that vision that the farmers had. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you go to Tabaquite, you will be surprised to see the kind of produce people are growing, the quality of produce. In fact, many students from the University of the West Indies go down there to the farms in order to see how agriculture is really practiced. And that they actually teach people, the students from there, about what goes on in agriculture. So this afternoon, I am pleading with the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, just like I have pleaded with him to deal with the Red Sand crisis, which nothing has happened about, affecting the construction industry. Mr. Minister, it seems that there are so many things that you're not dealing with. I wonder why. You're supposed to be a very efficient minister. You're supposed to be a strategic thinker. You're a platform for the government in the last elections. What has happened? Have you lost your zest for this kind of activities? It's a good question. So the packing house can add value add value to the country, and add value to the lives of the farmers. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
I now call upon the Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to respond to this motion. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me place on the record right away. The member for Tabaquite is not only my friend, he's my former lecturer and my fellow lecturer at the University of the West Indies. In fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've always said that I mark him as one of the most outstanding lecturers I have dealt with. And unfortunately, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he taught me well, unfortunately. And I must say, sitting next to him is a gentleman who provided me with the books that I used when he taught me so well, MP Karim. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I cannot believe, I was shocked when I saw this motion. I was shocked. And I gave my friend, I thought he would withdraw it. But in true Trini style, he took in front. Because let me start off with this, Mr. Deputy Speaker. When I was appointed in September, and I went to the office, I found waiting for me a publication called The Green Vine, dated July 2015. And gracing the cover, it's a NAMDEVCO publication, and gracing the cover of that publication was my friend, the MP for Tabaquite, and the minister at the time, Devant Maraj, Minister of Food Production. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, they were unveiling the plaque to commission the packing house in Brickfield. So something must be fundamentally wrong with this motion. If my friend goes in 2015 and unveils a plaque to commission the facility and then says to me, I have a motion upon the failure to get this facility going. Are there two facilities in Brickfield? Because I also listened to my friend, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I also listened to him talking about Brickfield and Teak and this facility. And I want to get my bearings right because, you know, I'm a minister. I don't go around the place in white Oxford shirts and yellow and leather shoes. I go around this country. And I have been to Brickfield, and I'm not sure if there are two facilities. One that my friend wishes me to use for teak, and one that my friend and Mr. Devan Maraj commissioned in 2015 that I have not seen as yet. I have a problem, because let me read and place on the record, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that from that publication, The Vine, the monthly bulletin, volume 13, number 7 July 2015. And I quote, the NAMDEVCO has officially launched the Brickfield packing house at Tabaquite. This new state-of-the-art facility will assist farmers by providing storage and processing facilities for their produce. The packing house provides a one-stop destination for the proper post-harvest handling and processing of fresh, minimally processed produce to meet local and international market standards. It must be two facilities. In keeping with the food production, blah, 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 blah. Mr. Deputy Speaker, my friend must not mislead the country. My friend must not play so sacrosanct. My friend must not spread fake news. Because in 2015, this was fake news. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this plaque was unveiled at a facility that was merely a facade. How could you be talking about state-of-the-art in Tabaquite and you don't have power? Are we going to run it on hydroelectricity? I am shocked. There was not one piece of equipment. When I came in, and he's right. He's right. He taught me a very strategic approach to doing these things. And faced with what I was faced with, and I've placed it on the record on this Parliament over and over, I have said to the country, faced with the resources, NAMDEVCO in particular, that I had to prioritize. I was shocked, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when I went down to the Debe wholesale market and saw, and I've said that for the Member of Parliament, I was shocked that as a minister with so much resources from 2010 to 2015, Dr. Monilal failed to spend a cent in Debe. So the resources I had, we put it first to the farmers' market, one of the most celebrated things. We all agree on that. It's doing well. Bringing production from farm straight to the consumer. We then looked at the infrastructure. Debe was a most horrible place. And last year, I was able to turn the SUD for 8.5 million upgrade of the Debe wholesale market, which has been finished. I also, at the same time last year, recognizing the need to prioritize, decided once and for all to deal with the traffic situation, the congestion, and the cabals at the wholesale market by commissioning an upgrade of the Norris-Dewnarine wholesale market in Macoya. It's finished. When you pass there, you'll say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am so busy, I do not have the time to go and cut ribbons. But it's finished, it's being used. The MP for Couva North will tell you, I listened to her, and we prioritized the project down in her area dealing with the improvement. A project, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that my predecessor had spent millions on. And she would tell you that she could not see a sign of the money spent, but she can see the sign of this money spent by us. The member. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have said to the country in relation to the packing houses, very first, Piarco was underutilized. I am so happy to see that a local company has been able to find markets in Florida for local produce. That company is now accounting for 60% of the activity in Piarco, and Piarco is now 100% utilized. At the same time, I've taken a deliberate decision that any other packing house commissioned in this country must be with private sector participation. And the reason I've taken so long with that, just like the quarries which were operating without license, without anything in place, is because I have had to go through a process. And my friend, as my lecturer, taught me about those things. So that where we are with these packing houses, UDCOT has developed the PPP. The government is proceeding in that direction. The next one, Brickfield, being one of the most important and not as big as Brecon-Castle, is going to be a packing house that is targeted for private sector participation, meaning, Mr. Deputy Speaker, any private interest, including the farmers. And that is the direction we want to go, because I've answered questions on the packing houses. I've said that it is not in the interest of the taxpayers to enter into any arrangement where the taxpayers must continue to carry the operating costs of these facilities when we have private sector interests willing to get into that. And that is where we are. I am at the point where we...
Silence, members.
I am at the point where we have moved from fake news, from ribbon cutting with nothing behind it, to putting things in place that will help our farmers in the long run. And making the right decisions.
Remember, you have 2 more minutes.
Making the right decisions and doing the right thing is not always the fastest way to go. I would love to put the red sand on the market. I have a responsibility as a minister to do that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But how can I face this country and say, in 2008, a man was given a 1-page letter, and from 2008 to 2017 was able to extract $248 million in material belonging to the state and pay only 10% or less than that for the use of that, with no mining license, no quarry license, no lease for the land. I will not, and my friend as my former lecturer will never countenance a situation in which his former student allows something to happen without the appropriate process. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Huh? Lazy. Huh?
Members, honorable members, The question is that this House do now adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. In accordance with Standing Orders number 11 and number 12.1, this House now stands adjourned to Friday, the 2nd of March, 2018 at 1:30 p.m.
The Joint Select Committee on the Anti-Terrorism Amendment Bill 2018